Good evening and welcome back to another exciting session of Conclave. Women from all walks of life play a crucial role in different organizations. However, since the pandemic began, people have begun finding it more difficult to maintain a healthy work-life balance. The uncertainty that looms, coupled with an overlap between someone's professional and personal life, has taken a catastrophic toll on the mental health of the workforce, with women facing significantly higher issues. The concept of hybrid model or hybrid work culture has become a fairly familiar term to organizations around the world. While this has been adopted by most of organizations, women have faced the brunt most, as personal expectations often clash with professional ones. If we look at the statistics that are available to us, we see that women's participation in the workforce has dropped considerably, especially since the onset of the pandemic. As we have established in the previous session, a diverse workplace is necessary for any organization to succeed. With this, the question arises as to how we can accelerate the participation of the women in the workforce, especially in India, to levels higher than ever before. For this panel discussion, we have joined by Mr. Vishal Bali, Ms. Mohua Mandal, and Ms. Sheetal Bajaj. Before we begin the session, we would like to introduce the moderator for this discussion, Ms. Romita Mustafi. Romita currently serves as the Head of Learning and Development at Monster.com India, Southeast Asia and Middle East. She has over 15 years of experience in training, learning, and development with over a decade of work experience in the areas of management and leadership development, organizational development, group facilitation, and training design. Before joining Monster, she has worked in leadership positions in IBM and HSBC. Romita's experience in such organization has given her the exposure to how companies are taking necessary steps in accelerating women's participation in the workforce. And we thank her for taking the time to moderate today's session. I request Romita to take over.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Achal, for that lovely introduction. Now coming to the topic at hand. While in the dire need to accelerate the participation of women in the workforce, adding to what Achal had said, it is understood that millions of women have exited the workforce since the pandemic started, many due to lack of school and childcare options. If left unaddressed, the exodus could set women's progress in the workplace back an entire generation, a path that does not seem to be a very distant reality. It has come to a point where companies and governments must create policies and programs designed to support their women employees and bring them back into the workforce. Some common practices we are seeing adopting include offering a pandemic leave of absence, designing return to work and reskilling programs, and committing to being inclusive of women candidates with pandemic resume gaps. For this panel discussion, I'm delighted to introduce three of our panelists. I can't wait to hear about their takes on what we as a society can do and what steps companies could take to accelerate women's participation in the workplace. Our first panelist is Mr. Vishal Bali, co-founder and chairman at Medwell Ventures Private Limited. Mr. Bali has years of experience building global healthcare delivery organizations, including managing an integrated healthcare delivery system comprising hospitals, diagnostics, primary care, and daycare. His cross-geography exposure spanning Asia-Pacific and the Middle East has given him the chance to transform healthcare business across different verticals. As a board member of leading healthcare organizations, he has been a part of the Strategic Initiatives Group of Joint Commission International US and the Global Agenda Healthcare Council of the World Economic Forum. His keenness in the globalization of healthcare has also led to case studies at the Harvard Business School. It's a pleasure having you join us today, Mr. Vishal. Our second panelist is Ms. Mohua Mandal, a graduate of IIM Calcutta and IIMC Delhi, currently working as a head brand PR and corporate communication, Poonawalla Fincorp. A self-attested bibliophile, she has led successful PR programs, brand management campaigns, and CSR activities across geographies using her strong communication skills. Her ability to work with diverse teams to create and manage organizational integrated communication and marketing strategies sets her apart as a veteran in her field. We are excited to have you here with us today, Ms. Mandal. Thank you for joining us. Our third panelist is Ms. Sheetal Bajaj, Head of Talent Acquisition, Branding and Communication, India and Australia, Sitel Group, and 15 years of overall experience in various departments of multifunctional national organizations. She has led various programs on diversity and inclusion at workplaces and a strong advisor of women empowerment. We are excited to have you here with us today, Ms. Sheetal. Thank you for joining us. With such a diverse panel and decades of experience between them, I can't wait to begin with this discussion to understand how they feel about such a pressing issue should be addressed. So without any further ado, let's begin what proves to be an enlightening panel discussion. So today's discussion, the panel discussion topic is accelerating women participation in the workforce, the Wellness Differentiator. So I will have questions for each one of you, Sheetal, Mohua, and Vishal. And, I would want to hear from you, your viewpoints on all those questions that I have for this panel discussion today. So starting off with the first question, how organizations can foster inclusive flexibility and sustainable ways of working to improve the mental wellness of women workforce? Can we hear it from you, Vishal?
Sure, Romita. So firstly, it's a pleasure to join all of you in this panel discussion and glad to be here. Obviously, we've come back to a physical work setting after almost 2.5 years of being dominantly in the online world. So, which obviously has left its own impact on the lives of both men and women, but more importantly, women, because of the doubling down effect that women go through in their life of not just managing their workplace, but also their home environments. So I think one of the biggest impact areas that we can do to sort of create mental wellness for women at the workplace is one, to create a lot more inclusivity and sensitivity for them in the way that we sort of work along with them in their work environment. I think a lot of stress factors that come into the lives of women at work are, one, based on very erratic, sometimes, work schedules. And I think more importantly, in the online world, it sort of became even more worse because, you were having meetings at sort of half an hour lead time, which obviously is unhealthy for a good work-life balance. So I think the first and most critical factor of creating mental wellness for women is to have a more organized work schedule so that they can balance their work and home environment. Second, I think inclusivity is a very integral and an important part of conversations, even at the workplace. Right. Women often feel differentiated at workplace, which could mean in meetings, it could mean at board level, it could mean just at the general level. So effectively, I think the best thing that we can do in our work environment is not to differentiate between men and women, while we are interacting with them on work, because that differentiation carries forward across the ecosystem. And lastly, I think a lot of stress comes on board, particularly when women are going through their annual appraisal cycles, because they always feel a little bit more differentiated, and they feel that they are not considered equal when it comes to the annual appraisal cycles or the annual just the annual reviews, which in itself, I think, for organizations, if they really care for inclusivity, it has to be the same as it is for their men colleagues. And I think that can create a lot of parity and a lot of inclusion at work, which effectively means that you give them more peace of mind, which effectively means that you can make them far more productive, which effectively means that you can make them far more inclusive. And more importantly, I think there is a happiness quotient to being at work, which actually makes organizations even perform better. So that's really what I believe we can do with their mental wellness.
Thank you, Vishal. Great thoughts there. Thank you so much. Can we move on to the next question now? So the next question is, how workplace factors such as lack of autonomy, unrealistic workloads can be dealt with? So Sheetal, can we hear it from you, please?
Sure. Firstly, thank you so much for having me on, and glad to meet you all today. To answer your question, I think I firmly believe this is where leadership plays a very important role. Like in my organization, I work for Sitel, and we have a working management where we have senior leadership evaluating performance, understanding the challenges. Basis that, we come up with an appropriate plan of action to drive results. Apart from that, we also have sit and tell surveys, which is utmost important to us, because these surveys, they keep the leadership team closer to the issues, and it can be resolved within decent time frame. Also, it helps us understand in case, the workload, when you say unrealistic workload, now there can be two aspects to that. Either it's really unrealistic and you can add more workforce to ensure that the workload is taken off, or you can provide the required training, upskilling to your employees and ensure that the employee efficiency is at par, that the workload does not remain to be unreal. So from a leadership perspective, I think being close to all these challenges would really help and, and kind of help us tackle this issue.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sheetal. So we move on to the next question for our discussion today. After a significant number of women had left the workforce after the onset of pandemic, would incorporate returnship in companies across India be a viable option? And if so, what scale? Mohua, can we hear it from you, please?
Sure, thanks, Romila, and it's a pleasure to be here in this esteemed panel. Coming to the question, so when pandemic hit, a lot of businesses were also hit. So we saw that businesses were scaling down, they were letting go of people, and unfortunately, women were affected the most in terms of moving out of workforce. Now, with the businesses coming back into steam and, post-pandemic, we see that, businesses are scaling up, they're hiring majorly, they're rolling out new plans. There is a huge requirement for, additional workforce, not just, at places where they let go of people and, now they are back to business, so they are hiring, but even younger businesses have grown, and the last couple of years have seen a lot of unicorns come up. So, the opportunities have, come on in the market. And it's one of the times where the job market is flush with opportunities. Now, interestingly, there is a huge workforce, which are these women who had to, take a break or they were let go of. They're a ready skilled workforce. It's a ready, base which the companies can explore. You have highly skilled women who are sitting out there, who are looking for, to come back. And I think it will be wise for any company to go ahead and pick them up, because you're not only getting skilled workforce, you're also adding to your diversity factors. I mean, it's one of the goals everyone is following these days, and you have a ready pool there. So why not, pick them up? So as businesses scale up, as I was talking, and as you're hiring, I don't see why you need to differentiate between, whether someone is, sitting out at home and available, or I'll pick up from someone who's already working in some other company. Treat this pool as, equivalent to any other skill pool you're looking at, and start hiring. They are ready to work with you. They are available, and they will be quick to join you as well. So for a business, it will be wise. I mean, if I have to just cite example, what what we are doing at Poonawalla Fincorp. And I mean, the entire bit a part of that we are driving and diversity agenda and all. When we are hiring, and we are also scaling up as a business, when we are hiring, we really don't look at gender to begin with. It's a profile with certain skill set, and that's how we start. And even if someone has a gap, and it's a reasonable enough gap, a lot of them have pandemic gaps, it doesn't matter. What matters is the skills they bring on the table, and that how is it going to help me grow my business. So that's the filter if we are using, and we are hiring majorly. I think a lot of organizations can just follow the lead and do that. So it's not about how you'll match the scale with the kind of pool available. Is the intent.
Right. I so agree with you, Mohua. Thank you so much. So we move on to our next question. What steps could be taken to create a more inclusive environment for those returning to a physical working environment after significant break? So Vishal, this is for you.
Yeah, so, as I had mentioned earlier, I think the balance had tilted completely to the online world. And we can still see that there is, and it's not just for women. I think even men are resisting wanting to come back to office full time, which is strange, but because I think somewhere the work-life balance, as we call it again, sort of felt a lot more better for people who were working out of home.
Yes.
But I think as people return back to their physical environments, and the biggest one is, how do they still feel safe in their environment given the entire issues of the pandemic? And unfortunately, the pandemic is still not over. And we are probably still going through the tail of it, because every now and then people still are falling sick and they're still getting COVID and they're still grappling with it. So number one, how do they feel safer coming back to their work environment? One. Second, what is equally important is, as they come back to the physical environment, is there a kind of a cooling period that one is giving to getting back to full throttle physical environment activities? Or you're still creating some kind of a balance between online and offline work environment? That you are giving some options for people to join in and do some online meetings and conversations and interactions. At the same time, you're sort of bringing them into their physical environment. Last but not the least, I think, as I said, that the physical environment also needs to get structured in a manner that if people have become used to a very differentiated thought process around work and life, does the physical environment and coming back to physical environment help them to retain that?
Yes.
And so therefore, how well structured is your physical environment and your work environment as it was when you left it last, or that the 2 years have given you a very different work environment, and how are you sort of melting into it now? I think reprioritization of life has been one of the biggest takeaways of the COVID situation for everybody. And it's not just the executives of the world, but for everybody. And so therefore, I think the physical, coming back into the physical work life, one needs to maintain that need around individuals. So that, I think, is one of the most critical factors for better work productivity as people come back. Obviously, there are some, call it jet lag symptoms, which are also happening, where people are suddenly feeling, a little lost in their physical work environment, which obviously is up to, everybody else, their colleagues, the office environment, all of us as leaders, to make sure that, people just feel welcomed back home into their work environments.
Yes, so true, so true. I agree to this, just because, working from home was so much more comfortable, because you worked at your own ease, and coming back to work, you have those travel and then, stipulated working hours. Thank you so much, Vishal. I so agree with you. Let's move on to our next question. What steps could be taken by employees to remove the pandemic gap year bias when evaluating potential employees' profile? Sheetal, can we hear it from you on this question?
Sure. So firstly, I think gauging talent basis their skills and potential is the utmost required thing and the key here. I completely agree with Mohua. She made a statement when she said that, why do we gauge talent basis gender? You just gauge talent basis the fitment, that who fits the role. And frankly speaking, while pandemic has been difficult for all of us, most of us, it did teach us a lot in terms of investing on right things and, like Vishal mentioned, prioritization, both personally and professionally. So I do now see a switch in people, that they are now sensitive towards the fact that if even at the leadership level, we now talk about styles like, I'm just quoting this as an example, that earlier leadership used to be like, a leader has to be an authoritative, leader has to do this. But now if you open platforms, it would talk about how your leader is, has the emotional quotient. I cite this as an example because there is a huge shift in the industry. And considering Sitel, we are BPO and we are people-intensive industry. So you just cannot bring in talent with a mindset of tagging people with gap or tagging people who does not have who's been out of work. I think as an evaluator, you need to have the approach of picking the right talent. For that matter, it's equally important to give chance to people who have the willingness and can be upskilled to do the job. So yeah, I think it's just an unbiased approach towards the whole evaluation process would help us, just eradicate the pandemic gap here.
Right. So true, Sheetal. Talent is irrespective of anything, irrespective of anything. Yeah. Thank you so much. So let's move on to our next question for the day. Reskilling and upskilling acts as a stepping stone for employees returning after a heat years. What are the most crucial skills that are should be taught to those returning to workforce in a physical setting? Mohua, can we hear it from you?
So Romita, I'm just, going back to what Vishal was also saying, that, a lot of people are showing resistance returning to the physical workspace. And, it's also because, we are conditioned in such a way that, we now find working from home far more comfortable. There are a lot of other factors involved. Yeah. One of the things, and it's we were joking about it the other day in our organization also, like the leadership team had a big catch up, is that, we are so used to having these meetings all the time because of what pandemic taught us. For everything, we're like, okay, let's go for a Zoom meeting. And, we're carrying those things in the physical setting as well, where you can just walk up to someone's desk, have a 5 minutes conversation and be done with. But if we set up meetings, so I think, starting on the lighter side, that one of the key skilling things which we need to do is to stop this meeting culture or meeting behavior. We have to stop being meeting trigger happy sort of. On a serious note, I think with the pandemic and how it affected all of us, we all found ways and means of balancing work with our responsibilities at home, and we kind of set into a rhythm. So when you're returning to the physical work environment, the most important aspect is to understand there is a certain time management skill to finish your task in time, and that's important because somewhere we had also kind of let go of boundaries between work and life, which in a physical environment is no longer possible. You have to reach office on time, you have to do your task on time, you have to return on time, there is a travel time. So time management becomes one of the key skills. And also in terms of so mostly I would say these are soft skills which are much required when you transit from an hybrid or a completely work from home setup to physical setup. A lot of us are so used to working from home that the entire discipline of doing things have also gone missing. So somewhere you have to, I would say it's reskilling, but you have to retrain your mind into work in a certain place. There are certain decorums you need to maintain in office, and I mean these are very basic things which was very normal and natural to us when pre-pandemic times.
Yes.
But we have to retrain our minds to do these things. But I think we are all getting there, and people are getting used to going back to the pre-COVID normal times. Of course, there are certain things which have changed. The ways you work have changed. There are flexibilities. There are the way you look at something as simple as probably or complicated as childcare also when you're going to work. All of these need to be balanced, but I think it's just rewiring yourself to act in a little differently in a physical work environment.
Very well said. And I'm sure so many people would be able to relate with whatever you said right now, pre-pandemic and post-pandemic situation. Thank you so much, Mohua. Let's move on to the last question, I guess, for today. Yes, the last question for today. Employees are exposed to longer working hours, resulting in poorly defined professional and personal spaces. How can companies implement effective wellness programs to promote a healthy work-life balance during this post-pandemic era and adopt a hybrid work model well? Vikas, can we hear it from you, please?
So let's start with, what do people begin to care more for, right? So coming back to what the pandemic has left us with, I think it has left us with a lot more appreciation around family, a lot more appreciation around children and what they are doing around us, our own children, and everybody else's children too. What it has left with us with is how well do I feel about myself? And so therefore, what is the amount of time that I'm getting for my own wellness initiatives, both in mind and physical? So I think the pandemic has left us with a lot of reorientation around the way that we are living our lives. And for some more, for others less. For some of us who used to travel very, very extensively, coming back to the same kind of travel schedule is now becoming much harder. In fact, I'm finding myself too, finding it so difficult to get back to that same rhythm of travel where you could just go on endlessly for days together, because now suddenly your work-life priorities had shifted for some time. And there is a massive ask from the families too. And I'm sure that this is happening across all families, right? That the demand for your time, not just as a spouse, as a mother, as a daughter of the house, everything has sort of just changed a lot more. So I think as the work life comes back to a certain degree of normalcy, we as leaders have to go back to what people desire more and how is that built into their new work-life balance. It is a fact that, a couple of years back and 2-3 years back, people's work and life balance was absolutely unorganized, right? Because everybody was in a certain mode of work. And that's why we used to always look towards the West and say, oh, they lead such balanced lives, right? And in India, everybody was turning around and saying we lead the most erratic lives because of the way that we work and the way that the thought of work itself in our own minds. So I think that's really what a significant proportion of thought process, particularly from the human resources function, in terms of how people are desiring their work-life balance as they come back to physical work environments. Second, I think it is also very, very clear now that those who are living healthier lives are also probably far more productive at work. So it is for the good of the organizations that people continue this balance to some extent. because it is just going to create a better outlook out of the organizations too. And third, I think it's coming back to the fact that if schedules online could work in a certain manner, then how physical environments, and coming back to physical environments, can also follow a similar or well-organized scheduled patterns of work. Lastly, I think a lot of organizations are currently rethinking in terms of, people want to go, and particularly the large IT organizations, which have a lot more extracurricular activities built inside their campuses.
Yes.
People are already talking about, I have a lot of my friends at leadership positions in some of those companies, and they are actually talking about giving people a break, every 2 hours. You want to go and play a game, go play a game and come back. You want to go to the gym and come back, why don't you just do that? Some of them even have swimming pools on their campuses. Why don't you just take a mid-afternoon swimming break and come? Now, these were unthought of, right? I mean, it was almost as if people felt guilty doing anything else during their work time,
Yes.
Which would so-called constitute extracurricular wellness activity. I think that is so critical now in the current optionality that given the fact that healthier people will create healthier organizations, both from a wellness perspective and also from an economics perspective, because good health is good economics. So I think that is really something that we should inculcate a lot more. While yes, the discipline needs to be there, while result orientation needs to be there, but how can we make it a lot more better for our teams, our organizations, to actually inculcate a lot more lifestyle change, which will make people a lot more lighter with themselves.
Right. Thank you so much. Great suggestions there, Vishal. And I'm sure people are going to take a lot from these suggestions. And I'm sure, for me, a person like me, I would love to have a workplace like this where I get every 2 hours work, 2 hours break, and I can get back to work with the same energy. Thank you so much, Vishal. Sheetal, your thoughts on this, please.
Well, I think I would agree with Vishal here that it's about, so during pandemic too, right? We used to come up with different ways of keeping our people engaged, though it was virtually, but we just didn't want our people to feel disconnected because
Correct.
we were not meeting face to face, the conversations were limited. It was all on Zoom. We didn't know how they were feeling. And that was the time where we all got together and thought about, okay, mental well-being is equally important as physical.
Yes.
And that's where, the cultural change, the company started investing in the mental well-being as well, thinking from that perspective too. We had done sessions for our employees that in case they're facing any issue sitting at home, this is the help desk number you can get in touch with and seek for professional help. It's all good. We had hobbies, like chat hobbies, where people with like-minded people used to chat, interact with people, and that's how we kept them motivated and going during the pandemic. And now when we are hybrid and we're talking of new normalcy of people coming back to work completely, that's what we're talking about. That engagement is now has to be a level up before pre-pandemic, because people are now used to that kind of lifestyle and prioritization. So all of that, keeping in mind, I completely agree with what Vishal said. We need to adapt to that culture where we make people physically feel more welcome, comfortable, and at the same time give them time to see what really works for them.
Thank you so much, Sheetal. And I agree. Now we have taken physical well-being and mental well-being has become one of the top priority for happy work environment. Thank you so much for your thoughts. And I've seen whenever we have sessions on mental well-being, the participation is in huge number because people do need that nowadays. Yeah. So great discussion, great thoughts, great viewpoints, suggestions. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And we are done with the questions for today. But I'm sure people are going to take a lot from whatever you have said and shared from this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramita. Pleasure to talk on the panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was a wonderful discussion. Thank you so much to our panelists for participating in the wonderful discussion, which has refreshing takes on the organizational lens on diversity. Thanks for watching. I'm sure you have thoroughly enjoyed the session. We can't wait to see all the attendees tomorrow for what looks like an absolute incredible day 3 of Triumph 2.0.